Thank you all for giving up your Sunday evening for me. This is a first ever podcast for Ada Lovelace Day, which is Tuesday the 13th of October. So the theme for this year is educators, and I was asked by Outsource if I could pull together very quickly a podcast. And I thought straight away of our lovely friends in the Sandhurst STEM squad. So we all met 2 years ago, possibly, or over the last 2 years, helping out Deb Taylor with the Sandhurst STEM event. And I've got a reference note if anybody wants to get involved in that next year, if COVID disappears by then. So I introduce Jackie Murray, Mike Neller, and Marilyn Henry, and I will let you all introduce yourselves. So Jackie, talk to me about who you are and what you do, please.
Okay, so I'm Jackie Murray. I am the Deputy Challenge Director for a big government programme called the Faraday Battery Challenge. It's £318 million of taxpayers' money being spent on innovation into battery technology for for electric vehicles that we have around us today. My background is I'm an engineer. I used to work on the steelworks a long time ago, and then went into environmental regulation and policy and government, and then into innovation as I am now.
Wow, thank you, Jackie. What about you, Mike?
Hi there, yeah, Mike Neller. I'm the lead of the Defence and Intelligence practice at Amazon Web Services. So I look after our relationship with the MOD and the security agencies, and with a wider group of the big defence contractors, so those that form up what is known as the Defence Industrial Base. My background, I started my career as a customs officer, spent 10 years as an intelligence officer and investigator in customs and excise, then moved into the private sector for a number of years before going back into the public sector with the Foreign Office, and then more recently worked for a couple of larger businesses, Lockheed Martin and Dell, and then recently joined AWS back in April of this year.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. And what about you, Marilyn?
My name's Marilyn and I'm the director of a trailblazing social enterprise called the Blair Project, which makes STEM learning fun using motorsport. We teach young people how to convert used petrol go-karts and turn them into fully electric e-karts, which they get to test and race to see which is the fastest and most energy efficient. We tend to target young people with low awareness of careers in STEM. So we're talking about girls, young people who are Black and Asian youth, and also young people from poorer backgrounds. So that's what the Blair Project does. We're very much about promoting diversity in STEM as well as diversity in motorsport. My background is that I'm a chemistry graduate. I worked for the BBC for 17 years as a journalist and also a series producer. And now I'm involved in R&D and innovation in new battery technologies and hydrogen fuel cells. And really, if I can do it, anybody can.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. So can you all talk to me about why this is such a great career choice for not just girls, I suppose, any young person who's thinking, right, what do I want to do with my life at 12 or 13? And again, I'll probably go in the same order. So Jackie, do you want to go first?
Oh, groovy. So I get to say something and you guys can either laugh or do better. So the thing I love about engineering is whatever part of engineering you're in, whether it's, you know, like Mike in software or Marilyn out with kids, you're always working to improve things. So you're always trying to make the world a little bit better, right? And the breadth of what we do is just incredible. I mean, I work with McLaren. I was telling you about going to visit their Evil Bond lair, which is also their technology centre, which is amazing, all the way through to people like JCB. I've been to Bolivia in the last 18 months. You know, it's just the breadth of complexity. and the fact you need this team and you're always pursuing just making the world a bit better, you know?
So I'm going to ask you this question. I know pretty much what you're going to say, but I'll ask it anyway for the audience. Is electric batteries, is that, going to make the world a better place? Or with the battery technology, are we just not creating a further problem for the future? Maybe not our future, but the next generations?
So we get asked that a lot. It's really interesting. It's I think it's a real moment actually that we're in. The science is really clear, right? So if you go on the Mini website, right, they compare a current Mini Cooper with an e-Mini Cooper, and you can see a 50% improvement in the impact. If you also then put it into, you have a renewable tariff and you're charging predominantly at home, you can get even better. And that's now. In 50 years time, by 2050, not 50 years time, by 2050, it'll be 10% of that impact. I think we've got so used to oil and gas, right? We things like the BP Gulf of Mexico disaster, we forget that the demand is driven by us nipping to the fuel station. So we wouldn't be pursuing this if it wasn't there. There's another study, if people are really interested, on the Department of Transport's website that shows just how much better it is now for vehicles and how better it will be by 2050. And it's just so exciting to be in the UK on that front foot, right? Marilyn's working in fuel cells, and fuel cells will be a big play as we morph through, and they'll need super batteries to support their development too. But actually, all of this is part of this really fast evolving technology. That actually a big part of what we do is trying to simplify that. So actually, it feels like you can make a difference in it. And as Marilyn says, if she can do it, if I can do it, I can tell you, you can come and make a difference in the world by working with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mike, tough act to follow. Talk me through what you do with US and why that's a great career choice.
So I joined sort of into information technology in the very early days. I was working for Customs and Excise, and it was the early 90s. Personal computers were just becoming available to people more generally. And of course, at that time, they were then becoming used by small businesses, large businesses for running their accounts and that sort of thing. And were just starting to become used by bad guys. So as well as being used for good, they were also being used by the bad guys to do their kind of activity. So it's quite clear that we had to do something to understand how they were using technology. And that theme has pervaded throughout my career, working with defence and intelligence, to understand how we can use technology both to support what we do to develop our national security, but also to protect ourselves against those who would use technology against us. So that's been fascinating, and a really fascinating career throughout the last 30-something years.
And why do you think it's a good career choice for somebody to move into technology?
Well, I think technology is all pervasive these days. The rapid pace of change, the fact that compute power doubles every 12 months. It's just absolutely incredible. And the things that we do today with things like artificial intelligence and quantum computing, we wouldn't have even imagined doing only 20 years ago. So we need a new generation of young people coming through who really understand those technologies, who are technology natives, unlike myself, who had to convert from pen and paper onto technology. I think we really need to bring through this new generation of young people who get it and can drive it forward for us.
I suppose as well, the youth of today, as we sometimes say, is they're growing up with technology in their pocket. My 5-year-old knows how to swipe left and right on an iPad and get what he wants on and put YouTube. So if you think what they've possibly done from the day they were born, they're going to be streets ahead where we are.
Absolutely.
Trying to struggle with Teams and Zoom calls and whatever else. And what about you, Marilyn? And what about you, Marilyn? Can you talk me through? Is Marilyn not there? Okay, we'll see if Marilyn comes back in.
It's gone mute.
Don't know what's happened there.
Marilyn, I think you're on mute.
Let me see. Don't think she's on mute when I can see her.
Yeah,
Oh, there you
is that fine now? Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So for me, it's, you know, I remember Albert Einstein said, imagination is everything. And for me, STEM is about tinkering and discovering new things. So that's what I absolutely love and adore. So with the hydrogen fuel cells, this is technology which is developing. And I think with a lot of the new technologies, you can become an expert quite quickly, just through tinkering and playing around. And I think that's what's really great for young people. Experiment. There are no wrong or right answers. And actually, when you get it wrong, you might discover something that was completely unexpected. So like Alexander Fleming, who invented penicillin, he wasn't setting out to invent penicillin, but as a result of his experiments, he's invented something that now we've all come to rely on. So all you need for a career in STEM is just to be inquisitive, to just have the interest or the curiosity to try something new, to play around with things. And I think that's what makes it fun. And then you'll learn and discover things. So there are no wrong or right answers, but actually what you'll learn is, how can I make this better? And I think the future is always about, how can I improve things? How can I make them better, so that you can take incremental steps along the way? And also it allows you to work with a community of other innovators. So for instance, I'm not an engineer, I'm a scientist, but I have to work with engineers, I have to work with data analysts, and that's part of the fun, because you're working with people. I'm very right brain, so I'm a creative strategist, but you're having to work with left brain people, and you're having to learn how to communicate your ideas in order to realize them. So for me, it's just a whole lot of fun, and you get to meet great people as well.
I think as well, for anybody who loves meeting different people and working, like you say, and learning from others, we don't all have to think right brain, left brain. We're all different, but together we create those fantastic innovations, like you say, and like what you're doing with fuel cells. What did you want to do when you were younger?
Do you know, it's really funny. At the age of 4, I decided I wanted to be a chemist. Don't ask me why, but I decided at that very early age. So I don't know if it was a calling. So I rapidly progressed through school, got my qualifications. Nobody ever told me I couldn't be a chemist. And so I went to university and studied chemistry. And when I left university, because the area of chemistry I really liked was physical chemistry, which is where physics meets chemistry. But all the jobs at the time, back in whenever, were all in organics. And so when I left university, I did a postgraduate in radio and television journalism, because I really enjoyed being part of the debating society. I had opinions, and I thought it would be great to follow a career in the media. But it's really funny how things have come back round again, and I've gone back to my scientific, analytical approach, and it's fantastic, because to be honest, I'd like to move on from hydrogen fuel cells and start studying gravitational fields as well, you know, in space.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's actually that thing about, you should never stop learning.
Yeah.
You should never stop being inquisitive, because the truth is, we only know 5% of all knowledge. So there's 95% of knowledge to be discovered. The universe is a massive place, and it's just that thing about being part of discovering what makes the universe tick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. Thanks so much.
Mm.
And what about you, Mike? What did you want to be when you were younger?
Well, I genuinely didn't have a clue. And I was one of those people, and I assume there are many of them, who had no vocational calling. There was nothing that drove me particularly. So I was doing my A-levels, and my headmaster at the time sat me down and said, "You're not very good at this, are you?"
Wow. Inspirational then.
He was absolutely right, to be fair. And he said, look, I genuinely think you should go for employment, go out, get yourself a job. Don't try and be something that you're not. And that was great advice. So I actually left school, joined the civil service, and never looked back. Absolutely had a fantastic time. I was very lucky with the organisation I joined, but genuinely, I'm one of those people who looks back and can honestly say I've had an absolutely amazing career without ever having been to university or done a degree or any of those things. Just found a pathway through life that's worked really, really well for me.
Perfect. And what about you, Jackie? What did you want to be?
Oh, it's so fun, isn't it? So I really, really wanted to be in Formula One. And so I worked pretty hard, didn't get great A levels, scraped into Manchester to do mechanical engineering. And there's reasons behind that, partly due to the school I was at and how they weren't great at teaching applied maths or physics. They're much better at pure maths and chemistry. So when I got there, I struggled. And I guess that's a message out to kids, right? We always think that it's the straight A state students that sit up to come and stand and talk here now. And actually what happened was I just realized I just wasn't going to be good enough. And I do think part of it was because probably I was one of the only 5 women on a course of 100, you know. So you kind of needed to be really, really good. And I never was that confident at 18. But I switched to materials engineering. I was at Manchester and just found a real love for that. But the love really came to light when I then walked out onto the steelworks as a summer job. And maybe it was the go back to play school, Mike, and the manufacturing element of it. I just fell in love. I remember the first time I walked out onto the steelworks, and it's like land of the giants. It's incredible. Everything's sort of vibrating as things are moving around, and you've got it's just amazing, right? And I just loved it. And so I pursued, steelworks career. I also really loved environmental. So again, Mike, that calling in life, sort of fell in love again. And thought, I'm going to have a second career, right? So my second career is going to be environmental. And now look at me, I use both of those things all the time. Having an automotive steel background gives me great insight into business and engineering, but also then understanding environmental law and a government, all these things means that actually you can wield that so that we really are moving as a country towards this goal of electric vehicle batteries, and the science and the engineers really are coming together. So it's a strange one, but it was a moment when I met Claire Williams, for example, or when I walked into, McLaren, and it was like 35 years, but I've got to form that. So really delighted with that. And I think a lot of it is about having passion. It may not be that 4-year-old wanting to do chemistry or whatever. The passion sees you through with a bit of resilience, right? And loving what you do. I think if you're a scientist or you're an engineer, actually, that is part of who you are. You get to do so much fun things, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that's where we are right now.
And like Marilyn said, with having that curiosity and that drive, and you don't necessarily need to know the answer straight away. It's that constantly learning. And
so I'm not, in theory, in an engineering job. And people ask me what my job is, and it's like, my job is to get the right stuff to happen for the UK in batteries for electric vehicles. That's it. And actually, that's not a million miles away from manufacturing engineering. It sounds like it is, but actually the thought process, the curiosity, the teamwork, it's actually way more similar than you would imagine.
Yeah. Who inspires you now then, Jackie?
Oh, well, do you know what? Is it really cheesy to say you lot?
No. Yeah.
So I mean that in the way that I think as you get older, you start to really realize the value that having a tribe around you has, and I think partly because I spent so long in a career where I was actually the only woman, that actually switching to a place where I've got support network, even if they're not always walking into the same meetings with me or whatever else. I've got people I can compare experiences with and have the occasional rant, but also who help me pick myself up and move forward. And it is people around me that inspire me. And what I'm finding more and more, I'm lucky enough to be a Royal Academy visiting professor this year at Leicester. And what I'm finding really inspiring is talking to 20-year-olds and hearing what their experiences are and hearing how they see the world. Because actually, for two reasons. One, because they're so young and fresh and fabulous. And two, because it resonates with me so much. And it's just fantastic to have that. There's 27 years difference between us, but actually I completely feel like I'm 21.
That's always nice. And what about you, Marilyn? Who kind of inspires you? Sorry, I'm going completely out of order now as well, guys. Just to really mix it up, make sure you're
Completely out of order.
Well, who inspired me as a 4-year-old was Marie Curie, who was both a chemist and a physicist, the first woman to ever win a Nobel Peace Prize, a Nobel Prize, and also the only person to win 2 Nobel Prizes for 2 different scientific disciplines. So in the early years, it was Marie Curie. As I've grown older, it's people like Nikola Tesla and also Albert Einstein. And the thing, but in particular, Nikola Tesla, because he was so ahead of his time. And what I love about Nikola is that he was looking at innovations which were about providing free energy for people. And he really thought outside of the box, and that's what I really love about him. He didn't confine himself to known knowledge, but he actually challenged what we perceived as known knowledge, and he was responsible for the invention of AC/DC currents and a lot of what we rely on. So even in terms of, he's probably the forerunner for things like Wi-Fi and radio technology. He was just so ahead of his time. So you know what? In many ways, I call him my mentor, my mastermind mentor. So it's Nikola Tesla, because I really buy into that. We should be moving into a space where energy is provided free for people, so that they can then use it to improve life on this planet and elevate people out of poverty.
That's great. I'd never thought of that. I'd never. But I will. What I'll ask you for, we'll signpost that in the club notes. I'll get you to send me the right sort of Wikipedia link.
Okay.
Right. And what about you, Mike?
So my early inspiration was actually very close to home. My mum inspired me. She inspired me hugely through my early years. My mum was a working midwife, full-time working midwife. So my experience of my parents was, my dad was somebody who was around at the weekend and pretty much had gone before I got up in the morning and was back after I'd gone to bed at night, working in London. My mum was somebody who, because of her shift patterns of working 7 days a week, at different times, she was always in a uniform. She was always telling me stories about how somebody had just had a baby and how she was delivering, these babies. And I just thought it was absolutely incredible that she had this job, which was bringing new life. And that absolutely inspired me as a child. Unfortunately, we lost her when I was only 13, and that was a big loss to all of us. But for me, took away my real female influence in my life at a fairly early age. And so I think that's what's led me to really value the influence of women and girls in the teams and the working environments that I've been in ever since, because I certainly realised how valuable it was to me in my early years.
Well, I know we've talked, you've been involved in a lot of reverse mentoring. Talk me through that and how that's kind of helped both you learn and give back.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my last role with Dell, we set up a reverse mentoring scheme. And I had a young lady in her early 20s, Martha Reynolds. She mentored me as a senior leader in the organisation. And essentially, we built a really, really great relationship. She taught me a whole load of things about how to get involved in social media, how to improve my LinkedIn profile, how not to be on Snapchat, and to leave that to the kids. But you know, she really educated me and taught me a whole load of things about how young people perceive work and their different view about work and work lifestyle, work ethic, compared to those that we had grown up with. In return, of course, I was able to mentor her through some of the early career elements of what she was doing, joining a company, but absolutely valuable as a two-way enterprise. And I'm just about, fingers crossed, about to launch a similar scheme in our own public sector business in AWS.
You're making change there as well. And I know we talked about you've joined AWS right before this pandemic hit. So you had to kind of start a business working remotely. How have you found that?
Yeah, it's been quite strange. I was interviewed in this sort of format. I went through the whole interview process. I started my job, and in fact, for 5 months, I didn't go to an AWS or Amazon office, and I didn't meet another Amazon person in the flesh. So quite amazing that you can actually get up to speed in your job, have a team. I've got a team of 7 or 8 people and a wider network of obviously hundreds, and yet fully functioning. And I think that's one of those things that, you know, technology can deliver that. However, I have to say, when I was able to eventually go and meet some of my colleagues, you know, get into a meeting in a socially distanced, appropriate way, but being able to do that was a breath of fresh air, because for someone like me, who thrives on being around people and gets their energy from being around people, and particularly young people, you know, I miss that so terribly. So yeah, that was a tough time, but it's amazing how technology now can allow us to do these things.
Yeah, and it is. I do think there's definitely some positives out of this horrendous pandemic. Obviously, we can't take away from the fact it's horrendous for the world at the moment. But I think the way that we're working, there's going to be some great things that come out of this. And particularly, like you say, that next generation technology will be even more important. Perfect. Okay. I think I've come to the end of all of my questions. Is there anything else that you would kind of like to say as a plug for you know, the next generation, what they should be thinking about, or a kind of inspirational message that you would have liked to have been told when you were kind of 12, 13?
So if I can start with that, joining AWS, joining Amazon, we have a range of what are called leadership principles, things that we take as the guiding principles behind the way we operate. One of those is learn and be curious, and I would say that isn't just something that you should do at work. That's something you should do in life. And I would encourage any young people who are starting a career, whatever that career might be, just absorb as much as you can, learn, be curious, go investigate things. If you don't understand something, it's perfectly all right to put your hand up and say, I don't really know what you mean. You've been talking about it for 10 minutes. I've been too scared to say, but I put my hand up and say, I don't know what you mean. Could you please explain that to me? And, you know, only by doing that will you understand what's going on and what the next step is to go and explore. And it's a never-ending continuum of explore, learn, be curious, explore some.
Thank you so much, Mike. Who'd like to go next?
I'd like to say that just to reinforce what Mike said, really, that I would say to any young people that, you know, try and find activities, extracurricular activities that you can get involved in so that you can discover what you're really good at. I think that schools have become places which are just about passing exams. So they don't provide opportunities for you to discover what you're really good at. And so please do go out and find and test and experiment so that, you know, you can become like Richard Branson, where you never work a day in your life because you're doing what you love. So find the time to explore and do what you love, and you cannot not be successful. You will be incredibly successful because you're doing what you love.
That's great advice. Thank you, Marilyn. What about yourself?
Just let my husband out. So the message, I think it reflects both of those, but it's my learning. My learning is that I'm enough. I don't think you get told that enough as a teenager, as a young person. You're enough, right as you are. You're enough, okay. And when you know that you're enough, you can hear things differently. And my favourite writer of all time, I even have one of her poems in my downstairs loo, is Maya Angelou, and she said, "Do your best until you know better, and then do better." And I think if you hear that, knowing that you're enough as you are, then you can take those steps. It's a gentler place than trying to battle through. So that's my message. Is if I was talking to a 12-year-old, 13-year-old me, you're enough.
That's a lovely message, and that's a lovely note to end on. So thank you so much for that. Thank you all, like I say again, for giving up your Sunday evening for me. I love what you said, Jackie. We really have got a true tribe, and I'll signpost again. Deb's bringing us all together with Sandhurst, and I think each and every one of you, and also the rest of the STEM squad that aren't here, we've all got individual passions and strengths, and I think together we're greater. I would just want to echo what you said. I think thank you all so much for inspiring us all in different ways and being there for each other. And like I say, also on a Sunday night.
Thanks, Rosie.
Thanks, Rosie. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.